Okay, coaches in cafes, having coffee here
Yeah.
at the beautiful Cafe Chimney in Stockholm. I'm Malcolm Larri, this is Krister Svensson, and today we're going to be talking about families. And Krister, you and I have been discussing that we should talk about relationships and have a series of talks on relationships. And I suggest that we talk about families first because it's such a primary relationship that we have in our lives. It's so foundational. I think it's a great place for us to start the discussions. And the thing that I'd like to talk about today is being at peace with your family, because so many of the people that we work with have family issues, have family challenges, and also the relationships you have within your family continually change over your life. So I thought we could talk about that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay with you?
It's okay.
And I thought we could start the discussion with, you know, the principle of why you want to be at peace with your family. What's the value of that for you, and how it will benefit you, and how we can go about it. But what do you see is the benefit of being at peace with your family?
For me personally, I think that one thing that you took up actually in our discussions in the first episode with happiness, I think it was.
Happiness.
You were talking about having a happy childhood, I think it was, yeah. And as you all can figure out, that as I'm a coach and therapist, I have had some issues and thinking a lot about my family and my history, and you know, and I've been sort of going around that issue for so many years, right? You know, and pulling it here and going there, and I'm angry at my, you know, and everything like, you know. And at one point when we were discussing this, I had the feeling that I'm all done with that, you know.
You've been around it so many times.
I've been around it so many times, and there's also the fact that I didn't have that bad childhood, you know. You know, so, but I went around so many times with it. So when I started to have a peace with that, that I actually had a very good childhood, and looking at my childhood as a bright, I looked at the bright things and the good things, and that's just it. And also stopped, you know, it took away the feeling that I had to be angry for things that I didn't have. Instead, I became grateful for the things I have, you know, which is quite a lot, you know. So it's a nice feeling, right? And I guess you also think about my sister, because we talked about that, of course. Well, something changed in my relationship with my sister that made it that you helped me with, and it made very obvious to me that she's my sister, and I love her, and you know, whatever issues, it doesn't, you know, it's just the way it is. Because as somebody said a couple of minutes ago, if you come into a family, you sort of stay in the family. You can't get out of family, right? So that's how we have to deal with it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're angry as hell, you want to kill your parents, they are still your parents. You have to find, so you have to find a way. I mean, because some patients or clients that comes to me, they say that, do I have to say that it was okay that my father was an alcoholic or whatever? Of course not. But it would benefit you if you accept. And, you know,
it is a fact.
You know, actually think that he didn't do good, but he did as good as he could do. This was it, you know. Because we all do as good as we can. Sometimes it's just not enough, you know. That's basically it. So, and it's often for people, you know, it's a very nice feeling when you accept the fact, you know. I don't forgive you, but I accept, you know.
Accept you. I mean, the other thing too is that as we move through life, the benefit that I see is that if you don't forgive your parents for not being perfect, which they could never be, because who is? But as you go through that process, you trap yourself inside that personal history, and there's just not a lot of freedom there. There's not a lot of room for you to grow if you're constantly hanging on to resentments and things that you think your parents didn't do right. There's not a lot of space for you to move in, and what I see is it traps people into repeating the patterns their parents had, because it's what they're focused on. And so if you can make peace with your family in whatever way you need to do that, you open up this huge, beautiful space for you to develop different kinds of relationships. And the truth about your parents is only one thing, which is they did what they knew how to do. That's it. There's nothing else. They did what they knew how to do. If they knew how to do something better, they probably would have done it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
And if you stand back and look at what they did, it was huge. And you know, we both have children now. We both have moved into the role where we're parents, and we can see how impossibly difficult it is to be an amazing parent. Like, it's such a big job to get it right, the constant balancing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But when it comes to how do you go about it, one of the things that I think is very powerful is what you just said, which is just to accept your parents for exactly who they are, and don't expect them to change, expect them to be different, don't expect them to be different people, and really stand back and look at them as people. Yeah. Because for a long time they're just mum and dad, and they actually don't become actual people until you become an adult, and then you can stand back and go, oh, that's my dad. He's someone who was married and got divorced and loved somebody and had his heart broken, and you know what I mean? And had a complex.
Absolutely.
It's like he became a whole person after I grew up. Yeah. But before that, he was just my dad.
And also, if you think about it, it's like what we talked about this before. I mean, it's also very obvious that you can't give away what you don't have. When it comes to relationship, you really can't. You know, I can't give you something that I don't have. If I have low self-esteem, this is what I will give away, right? If I had an insecure connection with my parents, I will give that to you as well. If I don't change, right? And if you're angry at your parents for giving you bad, or you know, and you're angry, why did they do this to me, right? What you're actually saying here is that you think that they should be able to give something that they don't have. It's impossible. You can be angry as hell, it doesn't matter. This man couldn't give you more than that, right? That was your father. Here you have what he had. That's a good thing that you give what he has, right? I mean, it's really powerful, you know. And still we are sort of, oh, I wanted more. Why didn't you give him more? I wanted so much love. Why didn't I get it? You know.
And it's like, it's almost like a universal. It's very rare that you find people who don't have something with their parents that they would,
absolutely,
having to work through and deal with.
Absolutely, and this you know now because you're a parent as well, right? So, what I know is that you can't. It doesn't matter what you do, because if you give your kid a lot of love, you have sort of, it could be too much. If you give them a little bit less, it could be too less. And it doesn't matter, despite of what you do.
They're going to be in therapy anyway.
You know, it's sort of part of the thing of growing up, that you have some issues with your parents. It's a way of sort of breaking with the parents to find issues with them, so that you can feel free and loosen up,
and
right?
leave the nest.
That's how it should be, right? So, but of course I know that there are people out there that had a really hard childhood. And I also often want to take up the fact that when we talk about fathers and parents and children, we often say that, you know, every mother loved their kid. You know, it's not true.
It's not true.
And it's not true that every kid loved the parents, you know. It is like that, but even if I don't love my parents, I just sort of have to accept the fact that these are my parents. This is, you know, this is what I got.
And they did their best.
And they gave me this.
And sometimes their best is horrible. you know.
It is, but it's still
It
what
is
they
what
got.
It is, it is what it is.
You know.
And when we talk about making peace with your family, it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, go over there and have dinner with them every Sunday night. It doesn't even mean that you even have to see them again. Sometimes the way that you get peace with your family is deciding, I'm not going to see them anymore.
Yeah, that's okay.
You know, I have, you know, people that I know that have decided that, you know, their relationship with their parents is not one that is good for them.
Yeah.
So then they've made peace with that, and they have moved away from seeing their parents and basically said, you're not part of my life anymore.
Yeah.
But that is also a way to make peace.
It is actually, and that goes into what we're going to talk about later, right? With addiction, you know, codependency and co-addiction. Because if you have a, of course, if you have a father, for instance, that you've grown up, he's been an alcoholic, right? And he continues to be an alcoholic because that's what he is, really. So then you have to break. The best thing for you is not to see your father as long as he is drinking, you know, for example. And that can be tough, you know, really. But you still have to deal with it. You have to find your way to the peace with that. There's
so
no way
what are
around
some ways that you think that people can make peace with their families if they've had a traumatic childhood or they really haven't been able to evolve the relationship to one that's really functional? What are some of the ways that you think people can make peace?
I mean, one thing that, I mean, it's maybe that's obvious, but if you take one generation back, you know, I mean, if I, for example, look at my parents, they're really nice people, by the way, but still they came from a generation where, you know, if I say that my grandmother, she had less of love in her life than I did, it would be like an underestimation, you know, because it was really like a hard life, you know. And my father, he became better, right? He found more love and found more ways to express that. I wasn't that pleased. I didn't think that he made it all the way through, but he really did a good effort with what he got, right? So if we look one generation back and we ask ourselves, what do my parents come with? What's their baggage? You know, I mean, how, you know, what did they deal with? You know, and often then you will find that they really did good. And
I mean, I can look at my own father and see that, I mean, my father's father, my grandfather, complete nutcase. Like, I'm seriously like a proper sociopath, not a nice man at all. So to see how much my father elevated himself, you know, which I can see now as a grown man, you know, to me it's like heroic where my father got to, because from what he came, what he had to deal with himself, you know,
it's amazing.
It's amazing, you know. So, you know, one of those things is perspective. So, you know, you're talking about having a perspective. What did your parents go through that made them who they are? You know, and you know, my mother is schizophrenic, and she has been my whole life, and you know, she has had an extremely difficult life. Like, I mean, as hard as it gets. Most people wouldn't stick around. You know, they would jump off a bridge or something. You know, if they went through what she went through. But just the fact that she's got such a loving heart, despite all of that hardship, is astonishing to me, you know. And, you know, I haven't really had a relationship with my mother because she was away out of my life from a very young age, from maybe around 5. I didn't live with my mother, and she got more and more ill and, you know, harder to be in relationship with because she was just so sick with schizophrenia. But to see that her core is still so pure is amazing to me, you know, and it enables me to have a relationship at some level with her, even though it's been such a difficult relationship. You know, that perspective of no matter what we've gone through together, her suffering has been so much more immense, you know. And the fact that, you know, for example, she gave, when my parents got divorced, she gave custody of me back to my father. The court said Malcolm should be with the mother, and then at some point she realised, no, Malcolm should be with his brothers and the father because it's better for him. Even that sacrifice she made of her happiness, you know, is so immense. I mean, we both got children. Imagine handing them over and not seeing them again. It's unimaginable, you know. So, I mean, if you stand back and really look at your parents' life and what they've been through and what they've struggled with, their addictions, their heartbreaks, all of those things, that it gives you so much compassion.
And it helps. But, of course, I understand that some, I mean, I met people, they have parents that, you know, I realized that they can't, you know. I saw a program about a man that was, his father was in the German army, working with Hitler, actually. And he was not a nice man, right? Because he was like executing basically all the youth in Poland, I think it was, you know. It was terrible, you know. And his father also died after the war in hanging and stuff like that. And he was the only sibling that was alive, and all the other ones were, they hanged themselves, you know, took their life, and you know, but he, on some way, he found peace with it. He, I mean, he really described his father as the most awful man on earth, right? And he really, you know, but on some way, he found a way to find peace. And I think you have to do that because there's no way around it. If you don't find peace, you will become the victim.
So one way is to create perspective by looking at your parents' lives and looking at their struggles and realizing that they're just people who have gone through their own struggles and hardships. The next thing is, I think, is to really look at yourself and be honest and realize that you're not perfect. And that you've done things that have hurt people, that you've, you know, been in relationships that weren't great, you know, lots of things. And of course, being a parent changes the perspective again. But really have a look at yourself and be honest and say, I'm not perfect either. And could I live up to the standards that I expect of my family? And the answer is usually no. You know, sometimes when I ask people that question, you know, when they're like saying, this person should have done that, it's like, well, could you live up to that standard? Have you ever done the same kind of thing? Then they can see how ridiculous that expectation is.
Yeah, of course,
So have a look at, you know, your own self. And do an investigation there and say, could I actually live up to those standards? Probably not. The third thing that I think is really powerful to do is to make decisions about the kind of relationship you want to have so that you can get peace. As I said, sometimes it means not seeing the person. You know, maybe you don't see someone, an alcoholic father or someone that you just cannot get on with, but you can also wish them well. You know, it's like, I'm not going to have this person in my life anymore, but I'm going to wish them well, I'm going to send them love, but I'm going to create for me a space that I need to have so that I can have peace with this situation. Because the other thing that can happen is that by someone stopping the dance, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the codependency
we
talk,
will,
is, you know, by someone stopping the dance, sometimes the relationship transforms.
Yes, that's true.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just acceptance that, okay, that's who they are and they're not going to change.
That's true.
And sometimes it does bring a perspective. The space brings some fresh energy.
It doesn't, and many clients that come to me, they have realized that, you know, I don't want to give my kids what my parents gave me.
Totally.
And I want to find a way to you know, to get a connection with my kids. Because you can change, right? You can change, but you have to, you know, be aware and just really do it.
Yeah.
But I also think that what you can ask yourself is that, do I want to live my life as a victim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, because that's what you do if you don't come to peace with this. You become a victim. That's how you are in this relationship. Everything that, you know, if you're talking about that, it's just like you're a victim.
Yeah. And you know, you said in the happiness episode, you know, you got to be prepared to leave that cozy place of unhappiness.
Yes,
right?
yes, and again.
And it comes up again. You know, a lot of people are holding on to these resentments because it's a place for them to stay.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's a safe place.
Yeah.
I can stay here. I can be angry, and then I don't have to change. Well, that's a choice.
Yeah.
And if you choose to leave that cozy place of unhappiness and create a peaceful space between you and your family, you'll have a beautiful space to create your life from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. A place of happiness.
A place of happiness. Yeah. And for them as well. I mean,
of course.
I can remember many years ago when I was 28, sitting my brothers down with my father and us having a day, just my brothers and my father, talking, and I said, I want to get all the skeletons out of the closet and us have a really honest conversation about our life and our childhood and things that happened and things. And I did it because there was sort of a crisis in the family at that time, and I was so bored of like things being in the shadows and things being swept under the carpet, that I just basically said, okay, we're just going to talk about everything. And it was a fantastic experience because, you know, most of the things that I was remembering a certain way, I was remembering with a child's memory. You know, there were things that happened to me when I was 5, and I'm remembering them as a 5-year-old. I have such a tiny perspective on the world as a 5-year-old, but hearing it at 28, what actually happened, you know, the whole story, there's a lot of freedom. And
that's nice because what you're doing there is you're going from being a victim in a dysfunctional family, right?
Yeah.
You becoming in charge and making your family functional. You're talking about, this is a table, you know, this is a glass, right?
Facts, right?
It's facts, right? You did this, I did that.
And you brought up the term dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
Show me a functional family. They're all dysfunctional.
They are, you know,
some of them are, you know, it's like...
But in a way, I mean, in perspective, I think you're right, you know, but on the other hand, there is a healthy way of being dysfunctional and an unhealthy way.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
Because in a truly dysfunctional family, the problem is that nothing is really true.
Yeah.
You know, nothing is really true. So
what do you mean by that? Because people aren't...
We were not talking about the problem. For instance, if you what we'll talk about later is that if you live with an addict, for instance, like you, or if you live with a person that is doing something, or you're unhappy, it could be like your mother and father are unhappy relationship, right? But we don't talk about that. No. It's great. We're going out to Granny's this weekend. You know, it's great. So, this is what dysfunction. We don't talk about what it really is, and of course, in every family there's some ways of dysfunctionality, right? But
some are more destructive than others.
Yeah,
right?
That's yeah.
Well, we could talk about this for like 5 days, but I think.
But we won't.
But we won't.
No.
Because we want to keep this to a reasonable length. But I think that, you know, people can think about this, what we've been talking about in their own life, and think about, you know, this. Usually in the family, there's like 1 or 2 relationships that are really, if you improve them a little bit, it would change your life a lot.
Yeah.
And it might be with your father. I mean, it happens between siblings too. You know, I mean,
of course.
You know,
but
I had 2 cousins that didn't speak for 20 years.
So my thing to say that is that you taking charge of your part of the communication.
Yeah.
That will change. That will rock your world.
Yeah.
You know.
And my advice is go first.
Yeah.
Be the person that goes first.
Yes.
Because that's where there's so much freedom in going first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can be the one that brings it up.
Yeah.
You're the one, and then whatever response you get, it's almost none of your business.
No.
Like if they don't want to talk about it, that's their decision, and you can be at peace with that.
Yeah.
But go first.
Be in
take
charge.
charge.
Yeah.
Take charge.
Yeah.
Coaches in cafes having coffee.
Yeah.
End of another episode.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Krister.
Thank you, Malcolm.